So we're going to talk about the verbs acheter and préférer today. And acheter and préférer are verbs that you guys should already know. We've used them before, but you may not know everything about those verbs. So acheter is, of course, the verb to buy. So we would use that in talking about clothing. And acheter looks like it should be a nice, normal, regular ER verb, but when we look at the conjugation, the forms of the verb acheter, this is what it looks like. Now, what do you notice is happening here? What is the change that you see going on? So the change is that we're adding an accent grave to this E, but we're not adding it in all of the forms. We're only adding it in certain forms. We refer to this as a boot verb. So if I could more easily draw on here, I would turn this into a little boot. There'd be little laces there, and this is the toe, and this is the sole, but you're just going to have to imagine it for me, okay? So this is a boot. Boot verbs, you may have learned about this in French 1, maybe not, but boot verbs are verbs that have some type of a change that happens in the je, tu, il, elle, on, and il, elle plural forms. And whatever that change is, it does not happen in the nous and the vous forms. So that's how you conjugate the verb acheter. So j'achète, I buy, tu achètes, you buy, etc. But I want you to understand why, not just this is what it is, but I want you to understand why it is what it is. So pay really close attention to pronunciation. The infinitive that we have here is pronounced acheter. This E in the middle basically gets left out. We're not going to pronounce it. It's not going to make a sound of any kind. In fact, let me see if I can, there we go. Okay, that's how we pronounce it, acheter. We completely ignore that E at the end. Now, when we conjugate a verb, of course, we drop off the ER, and that ER changes to a different ending. What do we know about the endings in the boot forms? Well, we know that in the boot forms that doesn't make a sound, es doesn't make a sound, doesn't make a sound, ent doesn't make a sound. And so the problem is if this doesn't make a sound, this has to, because otherwise if we took acheter, but then we're getting rid of the a sound, we'd have asht, and that doesn't quite work. So we have to pronounce this E. And the way that we indicate that we're pronouncing the E is by adding an accent. This is an accent grave, and the accent grave makes the E sound. So think of, in English, the word bed. That E is the sound that we're making here. And so we say, j'achète, I buy. Tu achètes, you buy. Il achète, elle achète, on achète. He buys, she buys, one buys. And then, ils achètent, elles achètent, they buy. We do the little liaison there. We can hear the S, so we can actually hear the difference between he buys and they buy. So because that ent is silent, or because all of these endings are silent, we have to pronounce the E. And in order to tell us that the E is getting a sound, we add the accent on top of it. Now, in the nous and the vous forms, we do pronounce the ending. We say nous achetons, vous achetez. And so because the ending is pronounced, that means that just like in the infinitive, we're not going to pronounce the E in the middle. So we just totally skip over that. Nous achetons, vous achetez. Okay? And so that's why we're not adding an accent here, because it works just like the infinitive. But we do need to add the accents there. Now, I do not have a place in your notes for past participle, and that's because this change that we're learning about only happens in present tense. These spelling change verbs that we're going to learn about, and we're going to learn about a few different ones. When we have a spelling change verb, that spelling change only happens in present tense. It doesn't happen in passé composé, so we don't have to worry about anything different in passé composé. We would just add an accent aigu to this E. Nothing else is going to change, no accents, nothing else, okay? So when we talk about spelling change verbs or boot verbs, those changes are only in present tense. So that's how the verb acheter works. So hopefully these spellings maybe look a little bit familiar to you, but that's the explanation of why it is what it is. Now, if we go to our other verb that we're going to look at, the verb préférer. Préférer, of course, means to prefer, and préférer is also a boot verb. Here's what the forms look like. Notice the change that we're making in this case. In préférer, we have two accent aigus. The first one, and then this second one here. Now, the second one is the one that's going to be doing the changing. And a little hint for you, whenever we have some type of a spelling change that's like a boot spelling change, it almost always relates to an E that is like the fourth letter from the end. So we have that in préférer, and if we go back to acheter, once again, it's the E that's the fourth letter from the end. That's where that spelling change takes place. So in this case, it starts with an accent aigu. It's flipping to an accent grave. And again, it's only going to do that in the boot forms. It does not change in the nous and the vous forms. And it's for the same reason. Because we pronounce the ending here, préférer, and the endings here, préférons, préférer, those all have the same sound. Accent aigu in French makes the sound A, like you would spell that A-Y. So the infinitive is pronounced préférer. Okay, so A are the sounds that we're making. When we have these silent endings, we don't pronounce the the es, the ente. We have to change the sound a little bit. The same way that in acheter we went from a silent E to a pronounced E, what we're doing here is we're going from the A pronunciation to an E pronunciation. So it would be really awkward if you tried to keep this same sound with a silent ending. It would be like je préfère, and it's kind of hard to get that A sound in there. It's much easier to switch it to an E sound, and so it becomes a je préfère, tu préfères, il, elle, on préfère, il ou elle préfère. So the first E, the accent aigu, is an E sound. The second E with the accent grave is an E sound. So both of those verbs are boot verbs. They change in just the boot forms of the verb. And what I want you to understand and remember is that the spelling is tied to the pronunciation. So if you know how to say it correctly, that'll give you a hint about how to spell it correctly. And likewise, if you know how to spell it, that's going to tell you how to say it. So that's how those two verbs work in terms of the weird spelling changes. Technically, they're ER verbs, but they're kind of like a special case of ER verbs.